staff room. This is the fourth of our 10 things, ... And I'm delighted to welcome Ben Sheridan and Ben Thompson from 407 Learning over in Bangkok, who are going to give us an international perspective on our 10 things theme. So it's over to you, Ben. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to turn my screen presentation on. Just bear with me one sec, and you should be able to see what's what.
Yeah, we can see it coming on now.
All right. So just confirming, can you see me as well? How does this work on this screen?
Unfortunately, we can see you. Yes. I mean, yes, we can see you. Yes.
Okay. Right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Yeah, I'm Ben Thompson. I am here with my colleague, Ben Sheridan, and we're going to be walking you through today some 10 things worth keeping. And I know we've got a bit of an international audience with us, but for those people that are joining us from the UK and perhaps, well, I don't know what other countries are doing, but congrats everyone for getting back. Welcoming everyone back this week. If you're back to kind of face-to-face, fully everyone back, or staggered, whatever, it's been a monster week, I'm sure, for everybody. So congratulations for all your efforts getting back to business this week properly, and Paul as well. We didn't get a chance to say it last week. Congrats on smashing through the 200 barrier of the virtual staff rooms. I think it's been a really valuable available resource and change of scenery and change of pace for everybody. So thanks for.
I'm already planning 300. I'm already thinking of
it. Go for it.
And I appreciate wherever you are in the world. It's a hugely busy week. So hopefully today will be something interesting and a conversation starter. So I'm Ben Thompson. I'm the Ben on the left. My colleague Ben Sheridan is the Ben on the right. We together are 407 Learning, which actually we're based in Thailand, but in the last 12 months we've reached across, I think, 11 countries at the last count, because obviously borders and boundaries are non-existent with everything being online. So we work with schools on their professional learning, their impactful technology use, their 21st century teaching and learning, providing consultancy, coaching, mentoring, professional learning, workshops, that kind of thing. And actually, we're here today to talk to you about 10 things worth keeping, but we have crowdsourced these. These are not our own. We've kind of reached into all our networks, all our group chats, all our Twitter kind of groups and conversations to reach out across the world and see what people think about or see what people think about what should we keep now we go back to face, or perhaps if you're joining us from a country that's been face to face for a while, what have you been trying to keep? So there's a Padlet here to keep things going on the conversation. At the heart of all these 10 is impactful technology use, whether it's for workflow, communication, enhancing learning, redesigning, teaching, that kind of thing. So at the heart of all these 10 are deeper learning experiences. So Ben's going to drop that URL in the chat. When you hear, some of them are quite vague, the titles, as you see there. So when you hear us expanding on them, if you've got any points to add, these are just meant to be conversation starters. So please just add your bits and pieces on the stickies, on the Padlet, and hopefully at the end we'll have some good conversation to hand back to Paul to see what's what. So this is going to disappear in a second, but we'll pop it up again at the kind of the halfway mark if you lose it. Okay, and I think the important thing is. We're all going back to school. We're all mega busy, right? Teachers were already busy. Teachers were 100%. We just kind of hope that everyone gets a chance to actually reflect. Everyone's gone back to, or in England, everyone's back to face this week, and it's a million miles an hour. What we really hope, and the feedback we've got from schools is, they need time to reflect, not just individually, but at a team level, a school level, and I guess ultimately a governmental level, right? To time to reflect on what's been successful and how education looks. Moving forward. So here's a accompanying Padlet. We're going to get on to the 10, and I say we'll pop this Padlet back up again in a few minutes if you lose it. All right, so on to the things that we have crowdsourced from people around the world that we think the 10th, or that they think the 10 things worth keeping are. And the first one, Mr. Sheridan.
Yeah, and also, it is worth saying that we actually walked around and talked to teachers face to face as well. So some of these things are actually born out of conversations, and a lot of the ones that we chose actually are themes that emerge from many of our conversations with many different teachers. We also talk to students, we talk to parents, administrators, etc. So
Talk us through this one then, Ben. Parent partnerships.
Sure. Well, this came out, and I think you'll recognize that many of these actually aren't new, but they're sort of new in the sense that they are either strengthened or elevated or expanded in some way. And so what we kept hearing from many teachers is that the level of sort of understanding and support that they have amongst parents is reached new levels. And it goes sort of both ways, where they have sort of an increased empathy and understanding for parents and their situations with their children. So I think what I kept hearing from people was sort of the big winner out of this, the parent partnerships, was actually the students, because parents and teachers are working together in sort of like new ways. So did you hear something similar, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've always had parent partnerships, haven't we? But actually the way they've flourished, the way they've developed, the way also, a lot of the tools we've been using, a lot of the LMSs we've been using, or cranked up a notch or two in the last 12 months, have got accompanying, parent apps, or, parents are more engaged, I think. So, like you said, it's nothing new, but I think it's been perhaps strengthened and almost redesigned in some ways.
Yeah, agreed. All right, next, what do we got?
Increased teacher efficacy.
So increased teacher efficacy. So efficacy meaning, namely, the teacher's belief in their ability to efficiently and effectively handle tasks, obligations, and challenges related to their job. And so when we talk about increased teacher efficacy, we namely are talking about an increase in their belief that they are able to successfully cope with the tasks and obligations, et cetera, that they're going to be doing. And one of the sort of standout situations where this became super evident is after teachers came back in the classroom and things were sort of going normal, and then they were tasked with actually going back online. And if teachers thought back to the first time they went online, and the anxiety and stress and sort of everything that was wrapped up in that was almost non-existent the second time. Teachers really felt and expressed like, you know what, we got this. We know how to do this. We're going to be successful. So that was one of the things that I think a lot of teachers expressed, like this understanding. And I don't know if it's because everybody came together to support each other so much, like across the community, or, whether they sort of feel like, they could handle anything that was thrown at them, because they did. Everybody was upskilling in new ways and, jumping into learning new tools, etc. But I definitely think this is something that, people definitely are carrying forward with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to raise one. We're working with a school in Lincolnshire that actually, when we first started working with them back in September, they were literally sending worksheets home in brown sort of envelopes on a Monday, still as September. And we started working with them, and we had a session with them a couple of weeks ago, and you would not have believed the transformation in what they were doing, where the devices, the home learning, it was like they were reeling off, bam, 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 we're doing this, we're doing that, and we got this tool and that tool and this device. And it's like, look, you've got to make sure as a team, you look at the journey you've come on, right? You've got to look back and say, wow, this is pretty impressive, because like I say, we're so busy, we never get a chance to kind of kick back and properly reflect.
Yeah, I think the hunger and confidence were so apparent that it was like inspiring.
Absolutely. Screencasting, right? Well, someone said this to me, and I was like, well, screencasting, is that something, weren't we already doing that? Like, wasn't that a thing already before, like 12 months ago? And actually, probably the majority of the people in this call, I'm guessing, we've been screencasting for a long time in one way or another, or mirroring, or whatever we call it, right? Whatever device we use, we've been, modeling via mirroring our screen to the big board at the front or to a screen, right? But for some, it's always been kind of that bridge too far. In my experience, and Ben's experience, in schools we've worked with, there's always been those kind of teachers that love it, that can't do without it, but there's always the teachers that kind of, it sits on the desk, or it's a tool that I got taught and I can't find a space for it in my teaching, and then moving online, we've been forced to do it, haven't we? We've been forced to share screens, we've been forced to demo from home, we've been perhaps to a hybrid audience where we've got some kids in face-to-face, some at home, so we've been forced into screen sharing, right? And now we've been modeling, demoing, explaining concepts, walking through problems, and it's kind of proved its own point as to how powerful screencasting, modeling, call it what you want, visualizing, actually is in education. and it's added in some respects a whole new dynamic to lesson design for those kind of laggards or those people that hadn't quite adopted it as mainstream teaching. So I think it's a really, really big winner, the fact it's been just catapulted well and truly into the mainstream for those that were maybe kind of seeing it as an add-on tool or, add-on sort of teaching method. And then if you throw in the ability that students can share their screens, right, whether it's on a platform like this, if you're remote, or whether you're, face-to-face and kids are working on Chromebooks or iPads and they can mirror to the front, we're talking about lesson redesign here. We're talking about outcome redesign. And I think we're hoping that just becomes mainstream. It just becomes a simple, lesson workflow rather than a huge sort of clunky, full of friction process.
Yeah, and sort of like totally separate conversation is sort of like this whole thing we heard from many teachers about screencasting, meaning like using Screencastify and actually recording mini lessons, et cetera, which is a whole nother thing. But it's funny how when I heard screencasting, I immediately went there. And when Ben heard screencasting, he immediately went to what he just described. So pretty hilarious on that front. I just wanted to point that out. All right, what do we got next?
Team collaboration.
This is something that, of course, we all work together. All teams collaborate. But what we heard from teams is that they actually collaboration took on a new meaning. Whereas before, collaboration meant, okay, we're going to actually come together and sort of plan the unit. We're all going to talk about something, and then we're going to go away and we're going to sort of do our own thing. Whereas now what happens is people come together and they divide the work. So they say, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to give it to you. You're going to do that, and you're going to give it to me. And so collaboration took on a new meaning and went to like new levels. And so now students are used to hearing other teachers in the year level explain things, or if, like, for example, if they're engaging in an activity on Seesaw, it may not have been created by their teacher. There's a 1 in 5 chance at our school, at the school I work at part-time at NIST, that the student actually is going to be hearing their teacher, because everybody's creating content and sharing it across the year level. So collaboration really took on a new meaning, and actually I think what we're seeing is more actual, what you would actually term collaborating.
Yeah, and I was talking to a teacher just the other day, and like their definition of collaboration in a teacher sense, like 12 months ago, was how long they actually spent together doing something. Whether it was team planning, face-to-face, talking through it on their PPA time or, in their team meeting. And actually, the sense of collaboration now is just completely blown up, hasn't it? And we've taken it to just another level, and the tools at our disposal. We're using Padlet today. We used Jamboard last week in the 200 virtual staff room. We've got interactive whiteboards that we can share online. There's just everything that is about collaboration and creating, whether you're a student, whether you're a teacher. And I think it's just absolutely been taken to the next level in the last 12 months or so.
Absolutely.
Consistency and approach, Ben. Consistency.
Sure. Now, this one actually came up a lot in administrators that I was talking to. And when I asked sort of like, can you tell me more about that? It was, because everything seemed to be everything took 3 times as long. And it was, it took so much more detail in communicating. They actually had to maintain consistency a lot more. And what they found was this actually allowed them to actually go deeper with certain things. And so they dropped, what they did is they focused in on like a core set of tools. And they were actually able to support those tools, because they needed, from a leadership standpoint, the ability to quickly and consistently support teachers, students, and parents with these tools. So they had to provide a consistent experience, because they felt like they needed to support these people. And because everything took 3 times as long, if everybody was using different things, it was going to, they wouldn't really be able to support everybody in a way that they felt comfortable with. So we kind of slimmed down, created this core set of tools, and then everybody agreed to use those tools. And what they found actually was, because everybody was using the same tools, and if we look at team collaboration, people were really building capacity as groups and using these tools to create really, really cool situations or really cool learning experiences for their kids. So I think that's something that teams are looking forward, like less is more, in the sense of what we're actually going to be using together.
Yeah, absolutely. 5 down, 5 to go. We'll just pause there for a second, let people find the Padlet again if you haven't already. Ben, do you want to drop that link back in the chat if anyone's clicking?
Yep.
We've covered the first kind of 5. If you want to drop some stuff in there, either what tools you use for the particular topics, what's been successful, what do you think? If we've missed anything, there's a column there for what else is worth keeping. Drop anything that you think, the successes from the last 12 months that we need to keep and build on. The Padlet is there for you, and Paul's going to pick up the conversation at the end. What do you think, Ben? Shall I keep rolling on through? Paul, you happy for me to keep going, or you want me to linger on this one for a minute so everyone can zap it?
No, I think if the link's in the chat, they can grab the chat cut from the chat.
Nice.
So I keep going, I think.
All right, let's roll on. So we've got those 5 so far. What do we think about those? I think they're pretty common. This was a big one, Ben. Communication.
Yeah, major. And I think I don't know that well, I guess there is increased communication, but what I kept hearing was actually the clarity and consistency in communication, because there wasn't a informal, I'm going to see you in the hall, or I'm going to bump into you, or you may tell somebody who then tells me, because we're going to bump into each other, or we're going to come together and I'll be in a physical space together so I can communicate that. And one of the comments I heard over and over again was, well, we really did find out what meetings could have been in email, And so I think what we saw from a lot of schools is, not like an increase in communication, but an increase in the sort of thought that was put into what was communicated, when it was communicated, and what channels it was communicated through. And I think that we've seen sort of maintain consistency into the year. So things are definitely, it's more intentional. It's not sort of like a free flow of information. Like whenever something comes up, we'll shoot out an email. It's actually, so you can expect this type of information in this channel at these times.
Yeah, just the clarity of communication has, the schools that have got it right have got it right. The schools that got it wrong had to get it right pretty quick because no one knew what was going on. Because it was coming at you thick and fast. So let's hope those kind of clear lines. And, things like, Google Classroom, Teams, whatever people have been using, that's actually helped streamline a lot of those communication lines, hasn't it? Especially between teacher and student, between teacher and teacher, so there's some big winners there.
Yeah, and I think just even so, like, what can we expect to come from the teacher? What can we expect to come from the admin? What can we expect to come from, like, at a community level, et cetera? And that was all sort of clarified, and I think it sort of like, it helped. It definitely helped.
Design. Surely this is the keystone to everything.
So, this kept coming up over and over again, and design meaning sort of lesson design, and sort of a lot of teachers learned a lot about lesson design really quickly, and a lot of teachers were designing lessons for an online learning environment, and they were never trained in this. So I was actually having a conversation the other day with a teacher who said design was one of the things that she is changed her lesson design based on what she learned in designing for online. She said, I learned quickly that I needed to include like these 3 modalities in my lessons, in every lesson that I designed for my kids when they were online. And she said, I actually include those same 3 modalities now in my face-to-face lessons, because I found like I used to just do a lot of talking, and I thought that the students were nodding in agreement that they actually got it. But now that I include these other 2 modalities all the time, I actually can pretty much ensure that the kids are actually accessing it in a way, whichever way they want. She said that was a real kind of light bulb moment for her, and she feels like a better teacher because of it.
Yeah, totally. And actually, we've got so many more devices in schools now. Certainly in the UK, with the push on Chromebooks and devices, we're going back to, it might be a different looking classroom, right? Because everyone's going back with devices. So, the momentum there, and we'll come on to momentum a little bit. We've got to keep. They can't just go back in the cupboards, right, back on the trolley until the next snow day or the next whatever. We've got to just we've got to use the best parts of those online lesson designs that really worked and bring them forward.
Yeah, and I think like one of the teachers I talked to said now, whereas before she sparsely used Seesaw for in class, and when she went all in, basically she had to with Seesaw, and she found it was such a good vehicle to give and receive feedback, very, very pointed feedback, and really allow her to understand specifically where the kids were at and what they actually understood, what they might not completely understand. So now she designs her lessons with that in mind, using Seesaw.
Yeah, completely. And Seesaw, you know, I think so many schools are coming back. Seesaw set up as, and perhaps Google Classroom the same, set up as an online tool to get you through online learning. And actually, actually, this is powerful back face to face as well, you know. When Ben and I were talking through these, we were like, okay, so if we were to rank these top 10, which would be number one, which would be number, in a ranking order. I would like to hear any arguments that says feedback is any other than like the number one biggest winner, or the number one thing that we've got to keep. Because let's be honest, feedback's been redesigned in the last 12 months. We've got to keep providing audio feedback. We've got to keep using all those features, Mote in Google Docs. We've got to keep using voice memos combined with Apple Classroom, audio clips in Seesaw. Feedback has been a huge win, I think, during online learning. Those feedback loops, we've added 21st century feedback into how to reflect how students learn, right? And how they want to receive feedback. Audio feedback is, I'm not preaching to the choir here, but, we know it's fast and effective, and tools like Seesaw, Google Class have allowed feedback loops. If schools still need it, they can print off evidence of acting on feedback, and at one school in particular, we know they fast forwarded their work on reviewing how they gave feedback. So they were about 18 months away from a review on kind of feedback and marking and all that kind of stuff. And moving online, just fast forwarded all that. They're like, right, let's do it right now. Let's look at 21st century teaching, learning, feedback, and marking. So moving back into face to face, kids love, young or old. They love giving, they love getting audio feedback, and not just teacher student, but student to student, the peer feedback, so quick, so effective to get audio or video feedback, and how parents get feedback. We were talking to a school just yesterday that are doing their parent consultation meetings. In fact, I think, Ben, your school aren't they? Completely on Zoom, is that right? So even our feedback, our feedback loops to parents is changing as well. So, tell us what you're in the Padlet. Tell us what you're doing for feedback. What's been the big winners in your schools? But and challenge me. I'll fight you. What should be number one? What should be number one ahead of feedback in this kind of list?
I think that's I kept hearing over and over and over and over again about how important feedback was, and how teachers learned quickly that you have to give pointed, really, really pointed feedback. If you're not going to be able to sit down and sit next to a child and explain something, that when you give pointed feedback and then they actually see specific response from the student and how they fix something or approach something differently based on that feedback, they thought, wow, very powerful. And oftentimes teachers would say they wouldn't have time in a typical teaching day in a physical environment when you're managing behaviors, et cetera, in order to give this sort of pointed feedback for each individual student.
I added this one based on a conversation with a school I had, I think last week or the week before last, about staffing structure. The kind of forward-thinking schools, the early adopters, the big budget schools have always had space for innovation coaches, cross-school coaches, data scientists, these out-of-class teachers that were responsible for edtech, e-learning, call it what you want. But many schools didn't, either through budget or just through not putting enough priority on it or whatever. But you're seeing more and more sort of jobs advertised now in that space, reacting to that. And for me, I take that to mean schools are taking that on board, that everything we've done in the last year wasn't a one and done type scenario. There are more and more of these positions being advertised because schools realize what an important part of education this plays, and not just necessarily in the structure of the school as in who does what, but how we work as well. A primary school in England that we're working with have actually said now you can take PPA at home if you want, right? It was a classic argument, certainly in England, can you take can primary school teachers take PPA at home, right? If they've got PPA time in the morning, can they come in late? In the afternoon, can they go home early? And yes, there's a time where you have to be in school if you have team meetings, or whole year groups have their PPA times together. But there was always that question as to, well, it means you're not actually doing anything. So I think a lot of schools are saying, hey, look, we know we can do all this from home now. Get home, avoid all those distractions that you'd normally get. 50 people, in the afternoon coming into your classroom and disturbing your flow and whatever. So I think not just in the structure of the recruitment process, but also in how we structure our day and how we work.
Yeah,
and then
I think. Well, yeah. Sorry, Ben. Real quick,
Ben.
just to piggyback on that. So since we've been back now, all staff meetings are a Zoom link is included, and if you don't want to show up, if there's actually something you don't physically have to be doing in the meeting, then you can Zoom in. So it's actually a really popular change that's happened.
Yeah. I like it. Long may it continue. And the final one, and I guess this kind of brings it all together, is momentum, right? And that's super important to us, and I'm sure it's super important to you, because we don't just want to pack it. We're back. UK schools, a lot of international schools now around in different countries are back, right? Are back face to face. So here in Bangkok, we're back face to face, in inverted commas, back to normal, right? But we don't just want to pack everything that we've done the last 12 months into a box, shove it in the corner, in case of emergency, next pandemic, break glass, bring it back out again, next snow day, whatever, right? We've built some momentum in the last 12 months. Okay, it might have been painful. Yeah. There's a lot of people that have been calling for wholesale change in education, to match the world we live in for a long, long time. And it's been really gradual. It's been slow. It feels like it's been dragging in a lot of schools, not necessarily your school, but in a lot of places. So for some, this has been like almost the meteorite hitting the dinosaurs moment. We get a chance to redesign stuff, but we've got to, we've had the biggest, probably, I mean, I don't know the facts and the figures, but I'd say, has there been a bigger teacher upskilling in the last 12 months ever? In terms of the technology that people have learned, the ways of working, all of these with technology at the heart of what we've been doing. So we've got to keep building on those on that momentum. We've got to be reflective. We've got to pick the best bits, because if done right, the physical face-to-face day shouldn't be too difficult. Actually, now, he says, to pivot.
Yeah.
The next snow day that comes along, in England, the next beast from the east, the next broken boiler, the next global pandemic that comes along. Schools are a lot better placed to be able to pivot to online, not just shut and we'll see you in a couple of days when the snow's gone, but to be able to pivot in between face-to-face to hybrid to blended. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but we're certainly in a better place now to do that, and we just have to build on that momentum.
Yeah, and I think too, what has allowed, what was really evident for us when we went back online after being in person for a while, is the systems and structures and that we've built to be reflective and to measure success of what we are actually trying to achieve, and then what's actually we're implementing. So, hey, we're doing this. How's it going? Well, I think it could be a little bit better. Okay, well, what are we going to change? Okay, let's change that. How do we communicate that? How do we measure it? Okay, is it working? No, yes. Okay, back to the beginning. So that sort of rapid prototyping, but not too fast, and checking, see what's working, what isn't working, and how do we effectively make this change. So I think that's something that we really took away, because when we went back online, we actually changed things, and we changed a lot of things during lockdown, and we actually changed stuff when we went back into lockdown, and that process actually allows us to continue to carry that momentum forward.
Yeah, we just got to keep going forward, and we can't just pack it back up and go back to what we were doing before. I think that's the big one. We can't slip back down that slope. So there's our 10, right? There's an extra column in the Padlet if we've missed something, or coming out of your schools or your experiences, or in your opinion, what else is worth keeping? What have we missed, or what did people not tell us? Before we hand back to you, Paul, these are the 10 things worth keeping. We want to show you the ones that stayed on the cutting room floor, right? These are the 10 that didn't quite make it, and you can take this as literal or as deep as you want to take it. There are some interesting ones there. The later start times for teenagers, especially, a lot of schools sort of said we get more productivity out of teenagers, later on. The big one for me, definitely would appreciate the 24/7 fridge access at work. Someone said to me actually today, wearing shorts to work. Yeah, we're in a hot country, and a lot of schools sort of enforce the trousers and shirt and tie corporate look, and they haven't put a pair of trousers on for 6 months. So there's some that didn't quite make it. Avoiding polite corridor conversation. Yeah, I'll leave that one there, but have a look at those. So I hope some of those resonated. Actually, I hope you feel the same. Really interested to. I haven't seen the Padlet. I'm looking forward to seeing what conversation starters we've got there. Ben, anything else to add before we hand back over to Paul?
No, I think that's just a big shout out to all those who contributed to help us build out this list, and for the conversations we had with people, and for you guys for listening and contributing on the Padlet. We got some responses on there, so please jump in and let us know what you think.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Benz. That was absolutely brilliant. That was really, really good. Really interesting, some of the things that came out. If I just kind of, while people are busy adding to the Padlet, hopefully, just a couple of things that dawned on me, and particularly with typed responses or typed emails or any kind of text, the tone of voice that gets applied to it is applied by the person that reads it. So we apply our own tone of voice, and that's true of feedback. But when you've got the voice of the person speaking it, it removes that because you hear their tone of voice. And I think that is a significant part of that audio feedback element. And I think that, certainly from my point of view, that's a really crucial thing. And I agree, we definitely shouldn't keep that. And the other one that really kind of chimed a bell with us was the momentum. Because of another friend that we have here who's big in the FE sector and sort of wellness elements of the FE sector, Lou Mycroft, she coined a phrase, no-go backery. And I think that's what it's about. We can't, just like you say, just pack it back into the cupboard until another emergency arises. We've got to sit and reflect. What are the elements now that have changed our practice, that have made things better for both teaching and learning? And therefore, we must do all that we can to make sure we keep all of those. That was absolutely brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So I'm just going to check.
I'll stop sharing, Paul. So we can,
yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, there you go.
Lovely, there we go. All the faces are returning now. Excellent. Good. So we're a small enough group for people, if they want to ask a question, just to ask a question. But can I ask that you use the hands up within the meet? It just means it's a bit easier for us to manage them because they come up at my end, of course, in the right order. So if you've got a question or an observation to make on any of those 10 things, either pop your hand up and then unmute, and I'll try and manage them through the attendee lists. If we don't get anything soon, I might just pick on someone. There we go. So we got Ian and then Scott. So we're going to go to Ian first.
Okay. The two Bens, thanks very much for all your hard work in putting those sort of things together. The reason I was off camera is I've moved between the kitchen and here and back to the kitchen and back to here, and I thought you just didn't want to see all the different parts of my house. So I agree. Feedback through this last 12 months has certainly been improved, and we all know of schools where they thought that remote learning was sending a pack of paper home for the students to fill out with no feedback whatsoever because it never came back and whatever. So I think feedback is so important. But I wanted to touch on two things. I think what's happened in this last 12 months is the relationship between the ease with which the engagement between the teachers and the parents and realizing we're all in the same space together, and having parents almost as extended, I know it's not the right way of probably describing it, but extended teaching assistants, and saying, well, we can't just we wouldn't bring a teaching assistant in the school and say, hey, just get on with the kids and sort of do some stuff. Whereas we just expected the parents to become pseudo teachers overnight. And where I've seen some great school teacher parent work coming on is realizing we have to support the parents in this thing. And I wonder whether going forward that might be an area that could continue. How do we keep upskilling parents as we do all these things in school. That was so good. And then I think the other thing is recognizing that through COVID, some students really excelled at home. Now because they were less disrupted, they could concentrate. I read yesterday students with and I probably get all the letters wrong, ASD or whatever the sort of hyper connected hyper students are, that they actually need lots and lots of breaks in their concentration in order to allow them to concentrate, and home sort of thing where they could concentrate for 10 minutes and then they needed to run around and go wild and then come back and do another 10 minutes. It was easier to do it at home than it was in classroom. So those were my two observations, but great set of slides, and thank you for that.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Ian. I'm gonna come to Scott first, and then to Ben after that. Oh, to you, Scott.
Thanks, guys. That was really great. That's a really interesting, broad list of 10 things, and I'll piggyback to start off what Ian said. I think that including parents in the equation, and I know that knowing that they're sort of thrown in the deep end, but also recognizing, I know as our school did, that we're not going to be able to figure it out. We're not going to be able to do the best job. We're still figuring out things as well moving forward, and try to work together with the parents. We know it's struggling. You're struggling. We're also struggling. Let's work together to find a way for all this to work. I think that that's really, really interesting thinking about how we can take that forward. I think one thing that I was thinking about as you were sharing your list was, there's all sorts of examples of redefining or better defining either the tools or the systems that we're using. And I think that, there's lots of examples of how, lots of teachers would rather never go to a face-to-face meeting again. They'd rather do it, via a Meet as opposed to go to a meeting. And I think that, and there's lots of wins there. We've here at this school worked, getting students together, either classes together or small groups, or even the whole school as an assembly, and recognizing that there's a lot of benefit from having it in this forum. There's lots of different engaging activities you can do in this forum that you wouldn't do, getting people together, wiggling around in a seat on a floor. And I think that that's really interesting. But thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Scott. Ben Thompson.
Oh, actually, just two things, just to comment on what Ian and Scott have said. Actually, just first of all, Scott, I mean, we have the beauty of what we do of being like we're not siloed in a school, so we get to see across kind of lots of schools, and kind of and see kind of trends, and we hear the same things coming up again and again. And one thing that kept coming up here in Thailand, certainly with the kind of higher end, if you like, tier 1 international schools. A lot of them are. This is in response to Ian's, comment about parents and working with parents. A lot of our early years kind of settings here in international schools are play-based. Right? They believe in play-based curriculums, that kind of stuff. And a lot of the kind of they're very wealthy parents that send their kids to the high-end international schools absolutely had no concept of how to play with their kids. Right, because that's why they've sent them to these schools. They're very academic driven. They get sent to these tier 1 schools with kind of their future mapped out. I'm obviously generalizing here, but they go to this school because they've got great pathways to these universities, X, Y, Z, right? But so a lot of our early years schools that we work with, or other schools with early years departments that try to pivot online and continue that play-based kind of concept via online, the parents are like, I have no idea how to support this because the nanny looks after my kids, or the driver drops them home at from school, and so actually the schools had to do a lot of work with almost run a parallel curriculum for the parents as to how to play. So I think coming out of that, hopefully there's a whole almost not quite generational change. That's quite a big statement, but there's a whole lot of parents coming out of it that are better equipped to be able to play with their kids. And just second one really quickly to Scott again from that kind of bigger view. The sharing vulnerability piece. A couple of schools we know actually admitted to their parents right at the start of lockdown 1. Look, hey, we're making this up too, right? We're trying to pivot as best we can, And that actually bought them some time, right? Because they shared that vulnerability. You know, there were some schools that just like made out, they knew what they were doing, don't worry, you know. And so parents were straight away on them. Okay, so what's happening? Okay, this isn't good enough. Okay, we want more. But the schools that shared their vulnerabilities and just said, hey, you know, give us a little bit, give us a bit of breathing space to work out what we're doing. And, you know, we're only talking a few days or maybe a week or two. They almost came out of it better because the parents were like, hey, we appreciate this is unprecedented. And it actually bought them a bit of time to develop. So just two quick thoughts on those points.
I also think that honesty with their parents made the relationship more human. I think that was part of it, that they thought, oh, you know, we just assume you're experts, but what you don't know everything. It's that, of course, they know that when you stop and think about it, but you don't ever register it, do you? So I'm just having a look through the Padlet actually, and I just happened upon this one first. It was purely coincidental. A comment from Dave about what else is worth keeping: the virtual staff room. You know, I just happened to be on my screen as the first one. Who knew? But actually, what he said is I mirror exactly what he said. I have learned a mountain of things about all sorts of things that I kind of had in my head. I'd been an educator for decades. I kind of knew lots of this stuff, but to have it refocused by someone who's really thought deeply about that this last year has been absolutely astonishing, and I've really valued that. It's been absolutely fantastic. And that, again, I've got people keep signing to me, and I've done the legwork, but this was Ian's idea, and it was a genius one. But you know, the value of the team, C Learning, have popped up and delivered that. Yeah, Dave again talking about the value of moat and that whole thing about audio feedback. Yeah, and Sammy saying, yeah, this is a time for change. Yeah, it's almost like a time to continue to change, isn't it? The change has happened now, and I think we've got to have a really careful eye in schools, because I think there will be people that will, in the busyness and flurriness of everyone in their new designed classrooms charging forward, there'll be people slowly stepping back and sneaking into old ways. And it's those we've got to look out for, I think, because people will want to do that. We want what's comfortable, and they're exhausted from the COVID thing, and to think, oh great, I can go back to the old ways now. That's, for some people, will be a real kind of benefit to their mental well-being, and they will need help and support to say, no, what you've done, actually, yes, it was a little bit harder work, but a lot of really great. So we need to kind of hold on to that. Do remember, you can post questions or pop your hand up if you want to stop me talking. Well, there we go. Ian's going to, there you go. Excellent, Ian. Yeah. Thank you. I didn't talk to read, you see, so I could go on forever.
Yeah, no. So a couple of things. I mean, different things. Did we learn through this last 12 months an issue around student well-being? And I know, Dave, we had this conversation very early on. Cameras off, cameras on. Oh no, cameras are off because student safety. You know, we don't want to be able to see the students, etc., etc., etc. Oh no, cameras on because actually, if we can't see the students, then we can't sort of determine those non-verbal. You know, do they look happy? Do they look sad? You know, are they distracted or whatever else? And I think there's something in just that one sort of question. Did we all become much more comfortable with that particular challenge? And then the other one is this. I just want everybody to sit in front of Zoom for the whole day, watching me do the lesson or whatever it is. No, what we need is this balance of some time in a synchronous mode, and sometime going away and doing stuff and whatever else. So that balance. Did we learn anything about those two things?
Okay, we'll go to Ben first. Are you going to respond to that, Ben? Ben Sheridan?
Yes, this Ben. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ian, great. I'm so glad you brought up sort of wellness and the student experience, because that was a big focus in a lot of the schools that we worked with, or just a lot of conversations that were happening in the region. And, you know, it kind of led into this idea that, you know, that is something we value, because we didn't have the sort of the momentum of the regular school day or the regular schedule or the regular events. We actually had to be super intentional about building time and building structure around these things that we value. And I think it was a big sort of eye-opener to a lot of people, in the sense that, you know, we're doing this because we value students' wellness, and we want to give them space to feel connected. We want to give them space to feel like they're part of a community. We want to give them space to express themselves in ways that aren't strictly academic. And I think it made us relook at the things that when we came back in person, that we kind of assigned to those things. You know, like, oh, well, it's maybe it's a whole, you know, an assembly that, you know, we're just going to put that over there because we believe that coming together is, you know, is important, da, 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 da. But we actually didn't think about, this is another one, design. How do we actually design that time that we're together to ensure or to support those beliefs? Or how are we actually measuring what those kids are getting? Or are we actually achieving what we set out to achieve with those things? So I think, you know, when I think about some of the things that we're taking forward, and in sort of your point on wellness, that actually has been something that has popped up quite a bit. So I'm actually pretty excited about the renewed focus on that. So thanks for bringing that up, Ian.
I think you're absolutely right. I think, you know, there wasn't an educator on this call here that didn't understand about wellness before, but it has really put it in the spotlight, hasn't it, because of the remote nature of what we've had to suffer. And I kind of want to go around, because we've got a number of schools from a kind of number of different phases, and invite them to unmute and just talk about how their approach to the wellness of their students has changed over time. So we've got Scott and Christina from Basel, we've got Dave, and we've got Steve, and we've got Marcus, all from different kind of educational institutions. Does anyone want to pop up first and just talk about how your approach has changed? I'm going to move. Dave, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think just picking up on Ian's sentiment early, one of the reasons I put the virtual staff room down on that list of things to keep was it was a little bit of a sounding board for me on a number of occasions over the year. And on that first occasion was when the senior leaders at one of our schools had made the decision to ban Google Meet, to ban all face-to-face teaching. Everything had to be pre-recorded and put out there. And it was when I pushed them for a reason, I was given a one-word answer of safeguarding and no explanation. And over time, thankfully, to their credit, thankfully they listened to some significant pressure from myself and others, and ultimately our one word reason for actually having these face-to-face meetings was safeguarding. It was that flipping it on the head. It was the number of times that a student will come and approach us as educators and say, I've got a problem, I want to talk to you about it, is minimal compared to the number of times when we will say, are you okay? Is everything okay with you? You don't look quite right. So I think that changed for us, and it was, I think it is testament to any organization when they can say, actually, do you know, we got this wrong. Things have changed around us. We need to change our approach. Let's retract that statement. Let's amend our policies and move on. So I think that it's a rather sort of inward-looking observation, but there will be other organizations out there as well. Just as we can criticize some organizations for not being willing to change, there's been so much change that's been adapted, and under such pressure as well. The leaders were absolutely bombarded with information, misinformation, lack of information, depending on where you're looking from. It was an impossible task, and I think so many schools have done amazing jobs to navigate the way through this.
Absolutely, yeah. Scott, Christine, any thoughts from Switzerland?
Thinking of a few things. When we were at a distance, that lots of teachers were focused on bringing small groups of students together, because of course, if you're stuck in your bedroom or your living room with your parents all day and having small groups of students, either for a formal reason, maybe for a bit of a read aloud, or just to gather around and chat about, you know, what you did in the lunch break. You know, I think that went a long way to helping a lot of students that were really isolated, you know, maybe single children, etc. We've been back to school for some time now in bubbles. So each of our classes is in its own bubble. So there are a lot of strained friendships, and we've really tried to focus on having the students in these bubbles to safeguard, you know, the ability for us to be at school. We've tried to foster the use of Google Meet or Google Chat so that they could continue having those friendships. One thing that's been really successful in our middle school has been Minecraft for education. So groups of students get together at a certain time, and they still play and get together, but they get together kind of in a different forum. But we also have a group of counselors who've been really active and proactive in not only being visible and having discussions with classes and students, but having all sorts of avenues or outlets for students to get together.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Scott. So can I also add, we've got Marcus and Steve on as well. Marcus, there you go. Excellent. Thank you, Marcus. I was going to ask you both, because you are at the opposite ends of those. Yeah, he's a small independent primary school in Portugal of, I think, 60 students, Marcus, is it? And Steve is a massive FE college here in the UK of tens of thousands of students. So that it'd be interesting to see what common ground there is. So over to you, Marcus.
The only thing that I noticed is that in our school, we have a check-in every morning, 15-minute check-in for well-being specifically. Before lessons start, just to let the kids do a little activity or exercise or get to play around a bit, and that tends to help. And then at the end, they have the Funky Friday, or whatever, they do something funny on the end of the week on Friday.
Excellent. Yeah, actively building those things in. Brilliant. Thank you, Marcus. And Steve, you got anything from your scales perspective?
Yeah, I think open and honesty. I'm not the best at constant communication, even with my team. Sam is on there, an honest approach, but when everybody's busy. But I think that open and honest, that staff are aware of it. They have somebody to contact. We did a buddy system, so everybody was in pairs. Sam, when she was with us, was unlucky to have me. But just that where if you wanted to rant, then have a conversation, see how you're feeling. You could pick up a hangout and message them, even whenever it was, and we kind of celebrated that. We're a big beast, so we're not getting everything right, but I think just that honest and transparent leadership and fairness to staff, and that culture of trust that we try and I definitely try and instill, where you don't have to be in the building. I honestly don't care how many hours you work. And people see that as, oh, how many hours are you pushing? All I'm interested in is how are you getting on, what impact, how are you feeling, how are the students, how's the work going, not the fact that you're working and coming 9 to 5. I constantly have chats with our HR department of, please stop telling me when I employ somebody that I need to put their hours and what they're going to work each day, because I have no idea. And really, I don't care, because if we really give the flexibility of that, then the benefit is to their staff, because they feel that they are empowered to put the foot off the gas when they need to be with the family and do what, especially these times. And I will continue to push, not returning to the building for my team when we don't have to. Pointless. And I hear so much rhetoric. An interesting story for students in terms of their well-being. Conversation 2 weeks ago where for students not attending Google Meets that are live, they're having Google Meet detentions after school on a Thursday evening. So as a consequence for not attending for live sessions, they're going to put them into a live meet on a Thursday evening. Let's see how that goes, shall we? But yeah, so students and staff wellbeing is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Thompson, you still on mute, Ben?
Sorry, yeah, that's a classic, that one. The only thing I was going to say, like, I know we've got leaders in the call and stuff, is like, let's not forget that this has been the most anxious and pressured time as well in probably human history for the population, and the people that were planning for wellness, or the teams that were making plans for how you keep your community well and safe and all that, were also under incredible anxiety and pressure and stress as well. So to plan for wellness when maybe you're not well, you're needing some help as well, is incredibly tough. So for the schools that managed to do it well and reach out, and the leaders that managed to plan for that, I think extra sort of doffed a cap, because they were under pressure and personal strains as well, personally, as well as them thinking of their teams.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben. So that brings us to the hour. Huge thank you again to the two Bens over in Bangkok, who can now relax and go and have a cold beer and hopefully cool down a little bit. absolutely fantastic session. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your contributions today. Some FE focused ones next week. We've got Scott Hayden from Basingstoke College of Technology, and Jackie Grubb, who's the principal at City College Plymouth next week. So those will be interesting. So keep your eye out for those. There'll be details coming out on all our usual social media platforms. And this one will be up on our YouTube channel once I've top and tailed it with some nice looking logos and bits of music and things. Thank you very much for your time today. Lovely to speak to you all. Now go and take a break. Look after your wet self. Thanks for coming along. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care, all.
Bye.